Did you know that coiled at the base of your spine lies a force so powerful, so transformative, that mystics have spent lifetimes trying to awaken it? What if this ancient fire, dormant in most humans, is the very key to unlocking dimensions of consciousness that our modern world has forgotten? They call it Kundalini, the serpent power, the sacred fire, the divine feminine energy that sleeps until the moment of awakening arrives like lightning splitting the sky of your ordinary existence. But here's what no one tells you about Kundalini awakening. It's not just spiritual bliss and rainbow chakras. It's a complete dismantling and reconstruction of everything you thought you were. It's the universe deciding that you're ready for a promotion you never applied for, ready or not. Tonight, we're going beyond the Instagram spirituality and the weekend workshop promises. We're diving into the raw, unfiltered truth about what happens when this primordial force decides to rise. Because whether you know it or not, whether you're seeking it or running from it, Kundalini is stirring in our collective consciousness like never before. Are you ready to understand why your soul chose this lifetime for awakening? In the beginning, there was the coil. Picture this. At the very base of your spine, where your tailbone meets the sacred darkness of your root chakra, lies a serpent. Not a literal snake, but something far more mysterious. A spiraling energy that Hindu mystics describe as Shakti, the divine creative force. Wound 3.5 times around the base of your being. This isn't New Age fantasy. This is ancient technology, mapped by consciousness explorers thousands of years before we had words like neuroscience or quantum physics. The Vedic seers who first described Kundalini weren't dealing in metaphors. They were cartographers of inner space, documenting the highways and pathways of human transformation. But why a serpent? Why this particular symbol that appears across cultures, from the healing rod of Asclepius to the serpent in Eden? Because the serpent represents the wisdom that comes through shedding skin, the knowledge that growth requires death, the death of who you used to be. When Kundalini awakens, it doesn't just activate, it ascends. Like a serpent uncoiling, it rises through the Sushumna Nadi, the central channel of your energetic body, activating each chakra like ancient temples lighting up in sequence. Root to sacral, sacral to solar plexus, heart to throat to third eye, and finally, crown. The journey from survival consciousness to cosmic awareness. But here's where it gets interesting. Modern near-death experience researchers describe something remarkably similar. A journey through layers of consciousness, each more expansive than the last. Psychonauts report the same ascending spiral of awareness. Even Christian mystics spoke of the soul's journey through the mansions of the interior castle. Same mountain, different paths. And then, the moment when ordinary reality reveals itself as merely the opening act of a cosmic play you didn't know you were part of. Let's talk about what they don't put on the spiritual retreat brochures. When Kundalini begins to stir, your body becomes a laboratory of inexplicable phenomena. Spontaneous heat that floods your system without warning. Electrical sensations that dance up your spine like you've been plugged into some cosmic socket. Vibrations that seem to come from the core of your cells themselves. You might find yourself crying for no reason, not sad tears, but something deeper. Cellular release. DNA unwinding patterns it's held for generations. You're not just healing your own trauma, you're healing your ancestral line backward and forward through time. Sleep becomes optional, not because you're manic, but because consciousness itself is restructuring. You might go days on 2 hours of sleep, feeling more alive than ever, only to crash for 12 hours straight as your nervous system integrates the downloads. And the downloads? Oh, the downloads. Knowledge flooding in that you never learned. Languages you never studied bubbling up in meditation. Mathematical truths, poetic verses, healing modalities arising from some universal library you didn't know you had access to. Your relationship with food changes. Some people can barely eat, sustained by pure energy. Others crave specific foods their body needs for the rewiring process. Meat eaters become vegetarians overnight. Vegetarians suddenly need grounding proteins. Your body knows what it needs for the upgrade. But perhaps the most challenging symptom? The dissolution of your old identity. Who are you when your ego structure begins to melt? When the stories you've told yourself about limitations, about who you can be and what's possible, start crumbling like old photographs in sunlight. This is where many people panic. This is where the psychiatric labels often come in. Because how do you explain to someone who hasn't experienced it that you're not losing your mind? You're losing the illusion that your mind was ever separate from the cosmic mind. The mystics knew this phase well. St. John of the Cross called it the dark night of the soul. The Tibetans call it the bardo. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. The chrysalis phase where everything dissolves before the butterfly emerges, and then breakthrough. Here's where ancient wisdom meets quantum physics in the most beautiful collision. Neuroscientist Dr. Itzhak Bentov documented the physiological changes that occur during Kundalini awakening. Brainwave patterns shift dramatically. The corpus callosum, the bridge between your brain's hemispheres, begins to carry different frequencies. You're literally rewiring your neural pathways for expanded consciousness. The pineal gland, that tiny pine cone-shaped endocrine gland the ancient Egyptians called the Eye of Horus, becomes hyperactive. DMT production increases. Your inner pharmacy starts producing compounds that would be illegal in any other context, except your body is making them naturally. But it goes deeper than brain chemistry. MIT-trained physician Dr. Deepak Chopra has documented how Kundalini awakening correlates with measurable changes in genetic expression. Genes associated with stress response downregulate. Genes related to cellular repair and regeneration upregulate. You're literally evolving in real time. Cardiologist Dr. Roland McCrady's research at the HeartMath Institute shows that during peak Kundalini experiences, heart rhythm patterns achieve coherence, states that radiate electromagnetic fields measurable up to 8 feet from the body. You become a walking, breathing transmission tower of coherent energy. Quantum physicists like Dr. Amit Goswami propose that consciousness itself is fundamental, not an emergent property of matter, but the ground of being from which matter arises. Kundalini awakening might be the nervous system's direct experience of this quantum reality, where the observer and the observed collapse into one unified field. This isn't woo-woo mysticism. This is the cutting edge of consciousness research, validating what yogis have known for millennia. Human beings are far more than biological machines. We're consciousness having a temporary physical experience, and Kundalini awakening is the moment when the temporary remembers the eternal. But here's the question that keeps researchers awake at night. If this capacity for expanded consciousness is built into our neurology, why doesn't it happen to everyone? Why does the serpent remain coiled for most of humanity? Maybe because awakening isn't just about individual transformation. Maybe it's about species evolution. Something unprecedented is happening on planet Earth. For the first time in recorded history, Kundalini awakenings are happening spontaneously to people who've never heard the word. Soccer moms in suburbia suddenly finding themselves in spontaneous states of cosmic consciousness. Teenagers experiencing full-blown mystical experiences without any spiritual practice. Business executives having encounters with divine love that transform their entire life direction overnight. Psychiatrist Dr. Stanislav Grof documented thousands of these cases, calling them spiritual emergencies, not pathological breaks, but evolutionary breakthroughs disguised as breakdowns. The rate of occurrence has increased exponentially since the 1960s, and it's accelerating. Carl Jung predicted this. He called it the collective awakening of humanity, a necessary evolutionary leap to prevent self-destruction. He saw the stirring of what he called the collective unconscious, humanity's shared psychic inheritance, rising to consciousness as our species faces existential challenges that require expanded awareness to solve. Indigenous wisdom keepers have been saying this for centuries. The Hopi speak of the Great Purification, a time when humanity would either evolve or perish. The Vedic texts describe the end of Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, and the dawning of a new cycle of consciousness. The Mayans pointed to this era as the transition into the fifth sun, a time of unprecedented spiritual evolution. But why now? Why is the serpent stirring collectively? Some researchers point to the increasing electromagnetic pollution, Wi-Fi, cell towers, satellites, that might be inadvertently activating dormant neural pathways. Others suggest it's the approaching alignment with the galactic center, exposing Earth to frequencies that affect human consciousness. The mystical explanation is simpler. Gaia herself is awakening, and as conscious cells in the planetary organism, we're responding to her call. The Earth is undergoing her own Kundalini awakening, and we're along for the ride, which means your individual awakening isn't just about you. You're part of a global nervous system coming online. Every person who awakens adds to the morphic field of expanded consciousness, making it easier for others to access these states. You're not just transforming yourself, you're midwifing a new species. So how do you navigate this transformation without losing your sanity or your life? First, understand this. There's no going back. Once Kundalini awakens, even partially, you've crossed a threshold. The old comfortable limitations no longer fit. You can't unknow what you've known. You can't unsee what you've seen. But you can learn to dance with the process instead of fighting it. Integration is everything. The goal isn't to remain in perpetual bliss states. It's to bring the wisdom of expanded consciousness into ordinary reality, to become a bridge between worlds, to be equally comfortable discussing quarterly reports and quantum consciousness, to hold both the mystical and the practical with equal reverence. Grounding becomes essential. Not just the New Age crystals and sage kind of grounding, though that can help. Real grounding means staying connected to your body, to nature, to human relationships. It means not bypassing the messy work of being human while you're busy becoming cosmic. The Buddhist concept of the bodhisattva is perfect here, one who attains enlightenment, but chooses to remain engaged with the world to help all beings awaken, not escaping into bliss caves, but bringing the light into the marketplace. And patience, divine patience with your own process. Kundalini awakening doesn't follow your timeline or your preferences. It has its own intelligence, its own pacing. Some days you'll feel like a god. Other days you'll feel like you're falling apart. Both are part of the spiral dance. Community matters enormously. Find others who speak this language, who won't think you're crazy when you describe the impossible things happening in your inner world. The path is challenging enough without isolation. Most importantly, trust the process. Your body, your nervous system, your soul, they know how to do this. Kundalini is not a foreign invader. It's your own divine essence recognizing itself. It's the universe waking up to itself through the particular configuration of atoms and stardust that you call me. But what does this mean for how you live, for how you love, for what you choose to create in the world? When Kundalini completes its journey to the crown chakra, something extraordinary happens. The individual drop of consciousness recognizes itself as the ocean. But then, and this is crucial, it doesn't remain lost in oceanic bliss. It returns, carrying the ocean's wisdom back into the drop. You begin to live as both human and divine, paying taxes and paying attention to cosmic downloads, changing diapers and changing the world. This isn't spiritual bypassing. It's spiritual integration at the highest level. Your relationships transform completely. How can they not when you see everyone as another expression of the same divine consciousness exploring itself? Love becomes less about need and more about recognition, less about possession and more about appreciation. You fall in love with existence itself, and everyone you meet gets to receive the overflow. Your work in the world shifts from career to calling. You can't pretend anymore that what you do doesn't matter. Every action becomes an opportunity to serve the awakening of consciousness. Whether you're a teacher, a healer, an artist, or an accountant, you're doing sacred work because you're bringing awakened presence to whatever you touch. The shadow work deepens too. With expanded consciousness comes expanded responsibility. You see clearly now how your unconscious patterns affect not just yourself, but the collective field. The spiritual ego wants to claim specialness, but the awakened heart knows we're all equally divine, equally human, equally works in progress. Compassion becomes your default setting, not because you're trying to be good, but because you see through the illusion of separation. How can you be angry at someone who is literally another aspect of yourself, having a different experience? How can you judge what you understand so completely? But perhaps the most profound shift, you stop waiting for your life to begin. You stop living in preparation for some future moment when you'll finally be ready, worthy, or enlightened enough. You recognize that this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this exact configuration of awareness is already perfect, already whole, already the divine expressing itself in time and space. This is the true gift of Kundalini awakening, not escape from human existence, but the recognition that human existence is already divine. Here's something beautiful that happens when you awaken. You become a tuning fork for consciousness. Your presence alone begins to activate dormant potentials in others, not through preaching or teaching, but through being. The coherent field you carry starts to entrain others to higher frequencies, like how a struck tuning fork will cause nearby tuning forks to vibrate at the same frequency. Children are especially responsive. They haven't yet been programmed out of their natural awareness, so they recognize awakened consciousness immediately. They feel safe around you in a way they can't explain. Animals respond the same way. You become a walking oasis of peace in a world that often feels chaotic. Your family might not understand what's happened to you, but they can't deny the changes. The reactivity that used to characterize your relationships begins to dissolve. You become a still point around which their own awakening can begin to organize. This is how consciousness evolution actually works. Not through mass movements or spiritual organizations, but through individual transformation, creating ripples that spread organically. One person awakening gives permission for others to awaken. One family healing generational patterns create space for entire communities to heal. The Vedic texts describe enlightened beings as world teachers, not because they teach in the conventional sense, but because their very existence teaches. They demonstrate what's possible for human consciousness. They hold frequencies that didn't exist in the collective field before their awakening. You become living proof that transformation is possible, that consciousness can evolve, that humans can transcend the survival programming that has dominated our species for millennia. But with this gift comes responsibility. How do you honor the awakening without spiritual arrogance? How do you serve without savior complex? How do you share without imposing? The answer lies in embodiment, in living the truth so fully that others are inspired by your example rather than convinced by your words, in being so genuinely peaceful, loving, and free that others naturally want to know your secret. We're not just individuals awakening. We're cells in the body of humanity, and humanity is awakening as a collective organism. The old paradigm was built on separation, competition, scarcity. The new paradigm being birthed through awakened consciousness is built on unity, collaboration, abundance. Every person who integrates their Kundalini awakening becomes a living cell in this new social organism. Imagine communities where decisions are made from expanded awareness rather than ego-driven agendas. Imagine economies based on gift rather than exploitation. Imagine education systems designed to activate human potential rather than standardize it. Imagine healthcare that treats the whole being, body, mind, and spirit, rather than just symptoms. This isn't utopian fantasy. These communities are already emerging wherever awakened beings gather. They're prototypes for a new way of living that honors both individual sovereignty and collective well-being. The ancient mystics knew this day would come. The Vedic seers spoke of the Satya Yuga, the golden age when human consciousness would flower into its full potential. The indigenous prophecies point to the time of the Great Turning, when humanity would remember its true nature and live in harmony with all life. Kundalini. Awakening is the biological mechanism for this transformation. It's how individual nervous systems upgrade to handle the frequencies of the new paradigm. It's how humans evolve from Homo sapiens to Homo illuminatus. But evolution is never guaranteed. We're at a choice point as a species. The old structures are collapsing under their own weight. The question is, will we choose to evolve, or will we cling to the familiar patterns that no longer serve? Every person who chooses awakening, who does the inner work, who integrates the lightning of Kundalini into the groundedness of daily life, casts a vote for evolution. Your awakening matters not just for you, but for the future of human consciousness itself. You are the future ancestors that the children of tomorrow will thank for making their awakened world possible. As we reach the end of this journey together, let's rest in a simple truth. Your awakening was never really yours alone. The same consciousness that moves the stars and grows the trees is the consciousness looking through your eyes right now. The same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies into being is the intelligence that guided your soul to this moment, this message, this recognition of what you've always been beneath the stories of limitation. Kundalini is not something foreign that invades your system. It's your own divine nature remembering itself. It's the universe waking up through the beautiful, temporary, impossibly precious form you call your body. Whether you've experienced full awakening or just felt the first stirrings of something larger than your ordinary self, you're exactly where you need to be. The serpent doesn't rise according to our timelines or preferences. It rises according to divine timing, cosmic intelligence. The same force that knows when flowers should bloom and when tides should turn. Your job isn't to force awakening or to judge your progress against others. Your job is to stay open, stay curious, stay compassionate with your own process, to trust that the same intelligence that created you knows how to awaken through you, and to remember every moment of expanded awareness, every flash of recognition, every instance of feeling connected to something larger than yourself. These aren't accidents or anomalies. They're previews of what you're becoming. They're the future bleeding through into the present. The awakening happening on Earth right now isn't just for the spiritually advanced or the meditation masters. It's for soccer moms and taxi drivers, for teenagers and grandparents, for anyone whose soul chose to be here during this unprecedented time of transformation. You chose to be here now. Your soul specifically requested this incarnation during the Great Awakening, because you have something unique to contribute to the evolution of consciousness. Trust that wisdom. Trust that choice. The serpent is stirring in the collective spine of humanity. Can you feel it? Can you sense the quickening? Can you feel your own divine nature preparing to shed another layer of the skin that no longer fits? This is just the beginning, and the beginning is always perfect. If this message found resonance in the depths of your being, if it activated something that felt like remembering rather than learning, then stay with us on this journey. Subscribe and let's continue exploring the edges of human consciousness together. Because the path of awakening is always more beautiful when we walk it together. The serpent is rising. The time is now. And you, exactly as you are, wherever you are on this spiral path, you are so much more magnificent than you remember. Welcome home to yourself.